Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're going to do a little bit of testing, and this is going to be based on a video and a couple of discussions that I've had both in video and in person with some people about a folding knife in a survival scenario. So what can you get done with a folding knife? What would you avoid, and how would you use it? And my argument that I made was that I would be pretty careful with a folding knife in the bush, especially in a true survival situation, because if I'm anticipating, a long-term kind of scenario, I'm going to want to make sure that that knife is going to be with me for as long as possible. Okay, so I don't want to be doing any bashing, and so my initial plan, guys, was to go out to the bush and film this out there. Problem was, in the last couple of days, we had an insane amount of snow here, so it's actually warmed up a bit, but there's still so much snow in the bush just on the flat that you would not believe it. Probably, 2.5 to 3 feet just on the flat. So that would, so the setup and preparation for this was just going to be too much. And I contemplated either putting this video off till spring or doing something different. And ultimately, I've decided this is going to be our approach. So rather than take the knives to the forest, I've tried to bring the forest to the knives, and we're going to go ahead and see what we can do with this fairly substantial branch. You can see it steps down here, so it's about 1.5 inches here, closer to 2 inches up here. I did that on purpose because I kind of wanted to see what kind of headway I could make with the two different size portions there. And what I'm going to do is imagine, the things that I might want to do in the bush. So I'm going to want to build a shelter. I'm going to want to make fire. I'm going to want to get kindling ready. Most of those things we would want to do some chopping to achieve, but that's not really going to be an option. So we've got to look at alternative methods to try and get a similar job done. And the other thing is what I'll eventually do, and I may have to pause I'm not going to I'm not going to make this a 2-hour video, so I may have to pause and work on this for a second and then come back. But I'll process some sticks out of here, some smaller pieces. Obviously, I'm going to work around this knot rather than try to cut through it. But I'll take some pieces out of this and see what we can do for batoning and kindling and that kind of thing as well. And then let me just give you this little preview. I'm going to save the wood that I get out of this because I've got another video coming up. I've been messing around with some Instafire. Maybe you remember it from Shark Tank. And I want to do some testing. So I've got about 3 or 4 different scenarios that I want to try Instafire in. And I'm going to try, one of them is different size kindling. Like, can I just take a stick this big, throw some Instafire under it and light it on fire, or will that not work? Anyway, and there's a couple other scenarios I want to try. So I'm going to cut this wood up here now in this video, and this will help us do some testing in terms of a folding knife and processing wood. And then we'll also save that processed wood and do some other stuff later. Probably, or hopefully, I'll be able to get back into the bush for that portion of the video. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into some of the tasks that I want to try. And I've got a bunch of different knives, and I purposely tried to pick some that I probably wouldn't pick, okay, if I had a choice. But one of the things I want to do here is imagine that I've got this fairly substantial piece of material, okay, and I want to break this. I want to get this down. So one of the ways, a strategy that I would be inclined to use to get through this would just be to slowly work a wedge away here. Okay, and in the forest, I wouldn't be killing myself, by the way. In fact, if I was just trying to get this down to, say, the size to put in my fire, I think most of you understand what I would do. I would take this, I would jam it between 2 trees that were close together, and I'd break it off, holding on the end, and use that method to get some material down. One of the things I'm hoping you'll see here as we kind of work our way through this is that, this wood is super, super hard, and you're not going to easily start cutting through it. Now, if we had a fixed blade here, it would be something as simple as, throw it in here, tap it in with a baton, throw it in here, baton it over here, and pull that wedge out. And you could cut through this pretty quickly and easily with a small fixed blade. However, with a folding knife, you're just not going to want to do that. So you're going to be looking for alternate methods, and this is so hard. One of the things I hope you're seeing is that, my strategy here is not the best option. I'm having to work pretty hard to process this down, and this is, around 2 inches. Now, if I move up here to the thinner portion, perhaps I can be a little more effective. There you go. And you can see I can cut out a little more here than I could in the thicker portion, just because I'm dealing with so much less surface area. All right, so that's definitely helpful, but this would still be a long time. And what I would probably want to do, I would just kind of work my way around. And in a second, I'm going to go off camera and do this. But all I want to do is get enough of a spot here that I can break this, and it'll be likely to break at the location that I have chosen. By the way, there's a lot to be said about a comfortable knife handle doing this task and about edge geometry. So a thin edge cuts into this so much better. And not only does it cut in better, but it also does that cleanup cut a lot better. So this actually works really, really well. What haven't I tried here? Let's pull out the Forester and do a little bit with that, since it's called the Forester. Okay, so this is one of the things that you might be able to work away at if you wanted to build a, you want to get a notch going for, shelter building, for building some kind of trap, or just for holding two pieces together. Maybe you want to carve a groove in here so something can sit in this, whatever the case may be. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep going here just a little bit. By the way, I'll just let you in on a secret here. This Para 2 is not super, super sharp. And I hope you guys can watch this without feeling seasick or anything, because I'm not being too careful not to kick the tripod. Okay, so I've worked my way a little bit through that. At this point, I would probably spin this around and work a little bit more. Okay, and I wouldn't even necessarily cut it all out. You can see in a fairly short time, I'm going to have cut deep enough here that I can break this off, and it'll break at this point for me because I've weakened it enough. Now this is only if you're needing something really precise. I think I mentioned as well that in what I would actually do in a real life scenario, I'm out in the bush and I want some shorter pieces for a fire or something like that, I would just stick them through two larger trees and break it off. Okay, I'm going to pause this for 1 second. I'm going to break this into some smaller pieces, and then we're going to see what else we can get done with a folding knife here. Okay, so in a spot where I had a little bit of leverage, I was able to work my way around this, and you can see I've cut reasonably deeply so far. Now I'm not quite done yet. I want to go a little bit deeper, but in 2 or 3 minutes of substantial work, you could cut this to length. Now this would not be worth it. Again, if you're making firewood, I would just break this over my knee. But if you need a specific length for some reason, you can work your way around this and slowly get to a point where you can break it pretty well where you want. Okay, so I'm going to continue with this for another minute or two, and then I'll break it off and I'll come back and kind of show you the finished result. Okay, so given about another minute and a half, I was able to whittle this down and get it to a point where I could break it exactly where I wanted to break it. All right, now obviously you could do that faster with a fixed blade and being able to just pound your way through. I do have to say a couple of things here. Having worked on this with all of the knives you see here, okay, the two that really stood out as I could get a lot of work done quickly and with the most comfort, I could foresee doing it for quite a long time. The Manix 2 lockback as well as the 8010. All right, and these two knives, it's no mistake, have the thickest handles of any of the knives that I've got out here. And because of that, they were definitely more comfortable in use. All right, now the next thing I want to try is some light batoning. Now I'm not going to baton, I'm not going to actually start pounding this through with another stick, but I'm just going to do some gentle pounding. I'll demonstrate here. I'm on a tabletop, guys, so this may or may not work on the table. I may have to go down to the floor beside and get it started and then kind of show you what I'm up to. All right, but if we take this small portion, you can kind of get the idea. So this is fairly small, and I'm pretty comfortable with taking this and just pounding it in with the palm of my hand on something this size. I don't think that's too strenuous for really any of these knives. Okay, so perhaps for testing purposes, let's use a knife that's not known to be super crazy tough and durable. So I'm just going to pop down to the floor for 1 second and give this a couple pounds so that you can see what I'm up to. Okay, so you can see just with the flat of my hand, I was able to pop this down through. All right, and now I could actually go ahead and keep pushing. And you can see how I'm able to work my way through that. This is a really, really hard, tough piece of wood, by the way. The other strategy that I would be inclined to use here is if this was just a little thicker and even a little bit tougher, rather than just push with my knife, okay, and run the risk, and I'm just pushing with my knife now, and you can see that I'm getting some progress. But what I would do is if I was really trying to save this folder, and I was, in a real wilderness situation where survival was on the line, I would take another stick or a rock or something like that, shove it in this gap that's open, this kind of thing. Let's see. The open L is basically a stick anyway. So I would take, that's too thick, but I would take something like this and jam it in that split that I've created just to take some of that pressure off my knife. Because again, I don't want to break this. And this is a knife that I like. I don't want to break this one either. But if I were to break this, it's no big deal. You can see I've got some other options. All right. But this is about as hard as I would want to use a folder if I was in a real survival situation. Okay, so I wouldn't want to go much further than that. Would I take this piece and do the same thing? One, this is probably a pretty nice size to go in the fire as it is, but let's imagine I was trying to get some kindling from it or something. This already has a nice split in it, so I'd probably take advantage of that and kind of work away at it. Maybe I will do that just for 1 second and see how we do. Just let me pause this again for a sec. Okay, so by moving down onto the floor and using the split that was already in this piece of wood, I was able to get some pretty decent headway. And I could, if you give me a couple more minutes, split this totally. So I just wanted to show you partway through the process. This is actually too long to fit on camera and split for you. So I'm going to go ahead and split this down all the way and then just show you afterward what the result was. Okay, so from the point that you saw a second ago, I was able, just by pushing on the concrete floor, to push this knife down through. And you can see the split that was already there, okay? You can see the dirt that had gotten into it. So there was a split already there, not right here, but I was able to push that knife through that. It wasn't easy. It wasn't something I'd want to sit here and do for the rest of the day. But if I was trying to split this down to get to some dry wood in the middle, if I want to now split this further to get some good kindling, I can absolutely do that. So it is possible. The other option would be maybe I'm making a bow drill fire and I need some flat pieces to make my rest or my my holder at the top. Sorry, I don't know every single term for a bow drill fire. I don't make one very often. So a couple things we can draw from this. There are some knives, this guy, boy, it could get this job done, but it would be very onerous. You would have to go so slowly and carefully. Something like this is much more confidence inspiring, even something like this. And in terms of handle comfort, there were two clear winners here. And this was not meant to be, about the knives themselves. It was just meant to be about what you could get done with a folder. All right, but I have to say the Manix 2 lockback and the 80 10 were both very, very comfortable in hand while I was doing these various jobs. And so if I had the option, all right, I would definitely want one of those two with me from an ergonomic standpoint. All right. Now, are there other things that you could do? Well, yeah, of course. Anything else, though, that, outside of batoning or trying to work through a large piece of material like this, okay, those are going to be the two most daunting tasks I would suggest for a folding knife. And again, a fixed blade would make short work of those tasks. I get that. And I would absolutely say, yeah, if you're going to be in the bush and there's a chance at all that you're going to need to use your knife for any kind of survival task, bring a fixed blade. Absolutely. But I think we have demonstrated that if you're careful, all right, and if you do as much as you can by hand, you can do some wood processing with a folder. It's just not the most ideal situation. And I believe you can do it. Now, I just used my hand because the purpose was I wanted to make sure that whatever I was doing would not damage the knife in any way, that I can provide some longevity. So if I, for some reason, was stuck out there for 2 weeks, okay, I'm going to be fine and my knife is going to last the full 2 weeks with me. All right, thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your comments down below. This was kind of an interesting video to make. We were kind of learning together. The other suggestion I would make is this just happens. Now you can see all the bark is gone, so I don't know what kind of wood this is. All right, but you can see that if you're going to do something like this, it's worthwhile to pick. Where I was hiking, there's lots of cedar and pine and stuff like that. Definitely much softer than this. So that's the other thing to consider is in an actual survival situation. You may want to pick the wood that you're going to be beating on or working with. I picked hardwood because I wanted it to be a little more daunting than that. All right, so thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will put a link in the description box to DLT Trading, and if you use that link to buy stuff, it does help the channel an awful lot. We'll talk to you soon.